Palace Perspective is brought to you by Palace Capital Advisors, a comprehensive wealth management firm with locations in the Northeast, specializing in financial and estate planning solutions, investment management strategies, and family office services for high net worth families across the country. Now here's your host, James Landry.
Welcome to the Palace Perspective, the podcast that brings you conversations and professional analysis on the topics and trends affecting your everyday financial life. I'm your host, James Landry, and I'm glad you chose to listen in today. We have a special guest here today, Mr. Joe Donovan, JD LLM, from NFP Insurance Services outside of Boston.
A lot of it is multiple perceptions people have had about insurance. Either they've been talking to an advisor who tries to convince them that life insurance is the solution for every one of their financial problems, or they tell you life insurance is a waste of time. It's like any other financial tool in the toolbox that should be used properly.
Joe is here because today we are going to be discussing the multiple roles that life insurance can play when it comes to estate, business succession, key employee, and other areas of financial planning. Also joining us again for the discussion is Palace Capital's CFO and partner, Charlie Evangelakos.
People don't even know which direction to turn. There's always these aggressive life insurance guys that have an agenda, and I think it's really important to be able to explain it to a client so they really understand the proper use of it.
So we've talked with Charlie before a few times, but who is Joe Donovan? Well, Joe is a principal at NFP Insurance Services, and NFP Insurance Services is one of the largest independent life insurance producer groups. He has spent his career implementing wealth transfer, charitable and business succession planning strategies for high net worth and ultra high net worth families. And Joe's experience includes practicing with a Big Four accounting firm, a law firm, and managing a legal team at a major insurance company. His legal, accounting, and insurance industry experiences make Joe adept in the sophisticated use and design of life insurance products. He has a personal ability to connect with the client's advisory team. His team approach helps coordinate the planning process with Palace Capital's CPAs, attorneys, family office, and other trusted advisors. So on a personal note, Joe was a member of Boston College's hockey team that reached the Final Four, not the recent Final Four, but he's married with 2 sons and a daughter, and Joe is active in his community and enjoys coaching, playing golf, and skiing. So Joe, welcome.
Well, thanks, James. It's great to be here. I look forward to speaking with you this morning.
And Charlie, welcome back to you as well.
Thanks, James. Happy to be here.
So let's get right into it. Joe and Charlie, we're talking about life insurance. Throughout your careers, what are some of the challenges you have encountered when addressing the topic of life insurance with your clients?
James, one of the things I've seen is life insurance is really one of the more misunderstood financial assets. I think in large part it's because the product's oftentimes oversold by advisors who think life insurance is the cure for all financial problems, or the exact opposite, where you see people like Susie Orman on CNBC where they say, don't consider life insurance at all. It's a bad investment. I think that creates sort of a conflict in the client's minds. Charlie, what have you seen?
Joe, I agree with your comments. I think another factor is the complexity of it, right? People just don't know which direction to go. You hear all these acronyms, VUL, index, term, whole life, adjustable, and it's so complicated that people, it's like deer in headlights. They don't move forward with it. So I think that's one of the bigger issues with life insurance.
Yeah, I think also, sorry, Joe, I think also, for many clients, the topic of life insurance is also a topic about mortality and death. And, some people don't like to contemplate that.
Yeah. Another is paying premium, right? Who wants to pay a premium? It's not a product where the client benefits. It's for their heirs. So you have to have sort of a long-term vision of who you're going to benefit. So all these complexities, between products and paying premiums and thinking about death and so forth is one of, many of the reasons why it's a complicated product.
Yeah. And I think, Charlie, you mentioned, you just said there that, you as the insured don't benefit. It's for somebody else. And yeah, I think in large part that's true. But I think most people think of life insurance as primarily a risk management tool, making sure my family has enough if I'm no longer around. If that's generally true, then why do wealthy people buy life insurance?
Joe, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, when you're talking about wealthy people and generational wealth, it kind of goes back to Charlie's earlier point is sort of what's in it for me. When people are thinking about transferring assets, not just to their children, but to their grandchildren, that sort of generational wealth, oftentimes we're looking at trusts and trust investments And life insurance is one of the most predictable and tax efficient investment vehicles you can use in that sort of multi-generational wealth planning.
Yeah, I agree, Joe. I think, first of all, it's easy, right? You pay a premium and your family collects a death benefit. So from that standpoint, it's easy. It's liquid, meaning that if you die, the money's generated in cash. But when I look at it personally, I look at it as an economic deal, right? That's how clients look at it. It's when I say economics, what does that mean? Like, you're going to pay $1,000 in premium, and when I die, I get $100,000 when I die. And what that means is, what is that rate of return to my heirs? So you could really break it down and think of it that way. It's like, if I pay X amount of dollars and I generate a death benefit, that equates to a 7 or 8 or 9% rate of return when I die. So, and you compare that to other economics. So, in addition to the economics, the tax advantages, and it could be a guaranteed transfer of wealth. Those are all the reasons why I think, James, wealthy people use life insurance.
Yeah, Joe, you mentioned a couple seconds ago that, life insurance as a financial asset is just one of many different tools or assets that, an individual might have. And there's that old expression, right? If your only tool is a hammer, the whole world looks like a nail. And so, yeah. I think generally speaking, risk management is, what people think of when they think life insurance. But there are other roles. You mentioned estate, wealth, intergenerational wealth transfer, Joe. What are other things that, you might think of, as an advisor for clients? And certainly you face, all sorts of different clients, right? Not just high net worth clients, but also
right.
Business owner clients, that are concerned about business succession, business owner clients that are concerned about key, person insurance or key person compensation. Life insurance, I know, has played a role in those types of, planning areas. What's been your experience there?
Think of your typical business owner, highly motivated, very successful. They're putting every dollar they make back into their business. Where does that leave them? They're in a highly concentrated position with very little bit liquidity. And oftentimes they're relying quite a bit on leverage. They've got a lot of debt oftentimes. Their lines of credit are very important. So when you're talking about business owners getting in and out of their businesses or transferring it to their children, they don't have a whole lot of options. It's either they can give away stock, which oftentimes they don't want to do. They have to pay it out of company cash flows, which they want to pay it out, or they have to set up a reserve. And that's typically how I promote life insurance to our business owner clients. This is a very predictable way to create a reserve to help pay for a business succession plan. And when you put it in those kinds of terms of, how else am I going to get out of this business? All of a sudden, life insurance starts to make a little bit of sense. I don't know what you've seen, Charlie.
I've seen all that, Joe. In addition, what about partners in the business, right? Where you have multiple owners and one of the owners passes away. We see it all the time. Now, obviously, how does that person get cashed out? How does the surviving owner raise the revenue or the cash to pay the family? And oftentimes it's really based out of cash flow. So the surviving owner essentially is strapped with a debt liability to pay off the deceased owner over a period of time, and they struggle for years to pay it off. So life insurance, I think, is used as a tool to generate the cash to buy out a deceased partner's interest. So I think it's really important, and also allow the business to succeed and move forward. So I see that quite often.
Yeah, interesting. Not only from a business owner standpoint for protecting for business succession purposes, as you just mentioned, Charlie, what about rewarding or incenting those key individuals on his or her management team? I know I've seen life insurance as part of that solution set. There's your traditional solution set, right? Which is compensation plans, whether it's stock options, restricted stock awards, profits, interests. Those are pretty traditional incentive type plans. But where does life insurance play a role in that area?
I look at the insurance could be used as the cash accumulation tool within a corporation. There are institutional type of life insurance contracts, corporate owned life insurance, private placement, or just traditional life insurance. Because the nature of the tax benefits, you can generate the cash accumulation income tax free, where the corporation is not paying tax on the liability of paying out the employee. So it's often used as a cash accumulation tool. So life insurance is a very customizable tool. You can design it for wealth transfer. You can design it for cash accumulation. You can design it for a number of different things. So I see insurance being used in corporations, for cash accumulation. Joe, what about you?
In adding to that, I think that's absolutely right. I think the other thing is, especially in the closely held and family-owned businesses, James's idea of giving equity interest, whether it's stock options or actually giving stock, they don't want to give stock away to non-family members. So this is a way to give some compensation without just giving them a bonus and having no golden handcuffs. There's, with life insurance and some of these deferred comp plans, there's a way to lock in key people so that you've got vesting and triggering mechanisms out in the future without actually having to give away equity in the company.
I think life insurance is similar in some respects to, other various forms of transferring wealth to the next generation or to a beneficiary. And think of a will or a revocable trust. You do a will and a revocable trust, 10 years go by, it's time to go back and review that will and trust to make sure, have my family dynamics changed, my objectives changed, has the current law changed? And I would imagine life insurance in some ways is similar. You write or you purchase a policy for wealth transfer or for risk management. A number of years goes by, it's important to go back and review and make sure that policy is still, meeting your objectives. Is that fair to say, Joe?
Absolutely. I mean, think about what you guys do at Palace Capital in terms of investment, portfolio reviews, constantly, monitoring the marketplace. Insurance is probably the largest unmanaged financial asset in someone's portfolio. You're talking about $1 million, $5 million, $10 million that people invest in this, instrument and never look at it. And even though it's very predictable, changes do happen in industry. Companies go in and out of business. Interest crediting rates change. Costs of insurance change. It's just like any other financial instrument. It needs to be looked at.
I agree. Absolutely agree. At first, I think it's as important to review a life insurance policy as it is an investment portfolio. If I were to review a policy, I would, number one, look to make sure the ownership is still appropriate. A lot of people will buy it when they're younger and they will own it directly. And over time, they get wealthier. And as a death benefit will actually be added to your estate and could be taxable for estate taxes. So one is to check the ownership. Is there any way that we could maximize the value? Secondly, is to check the beneficiary. Do I have the proper beneficiaries? Have there been changes in my life over the past 20, 30 years? And third is the viability of the policy. Are we still meeting our original projections? Many people bought a policy 10, 20 years ago when the interest rate was 7, 8, 9%, and that's what they were generating, for interest in their contract. And now it's been reduced to 4%, which have a very adverse effect on the policy. And often, I hate to say it, oftentimes the policy could lapse before life expectancy.
Yeah, I think, we should probably just let our listeners know that, there are many different types of life insurance policies. But I think, if we were to select just two broad categories, there's term insurance and there's permanent insurance or quasi-permanent insurance. And so when you're talking about annual policy reviews, certainly term insurance should be part of that. But really, you guys are talking about permanent. And in your case, Charlie, you mentioned cash value life insurance policies.
Right.
And it seems to me that, life insurance is a financial instrument. And because it's a financial instrument, it's somewhat impacted, I guess, by the world around it. And, for example, interest rates. And so, you mentioned annual reviews and the importance of it. It sounds to me like change is pretty constant, even in the life insurance industry. What are some current trends or features in life insurance products today? And particularly, I'd say within recent history where we've seen life insurance or the interest rates just be so low for so long and, for the foreseeable future.
I think that's a great point. Many insurance contracts are interest rate sensitive. We know what the interest rates have done. So that's affected the viability of an individual client's policy. And you also have to look to the carriers because for the most part, they take those premium dollars and invest them in bonds in the company's general account portfolio. So their profits, and developing these products are interest-based. So you've seen the cost, even though mortality has gone down, you haven't seen big drops in the price of insurance, largely because of that reason, the interest rate assumptions. The other thing is, in the banking crisis, the insurance companies were also required to reserve more capital. And an interesting fact is you've seen a lot of companies now getting out of the insurance business, which goes back to our point of reviewing policies. You've seen a lot of the larger European companies, AXA, Aviva, Voya, they've all, getting out of selling life insurance. And I've found, his experience tells me, when people get out of the business of selling life insurance, they tend not to treat their policyholders as well as people that are still actively in the business. I don't know what you've seen, Charlie.
I absolutely agree with you, Joe. It's a constant moving target, life insurance, mortality rates, interest rates, products, designs, whether does a client want to take the risk of a policy where they're investing the money in mutual funds versus a traditional old whole life contract where the company pays you a dividend. So all that has changed. There are many more options today in the marketplace than there were 20 years ago.
So Joe, in my career, which I believe is a little shorter than yours at this point, I've seen a lot of tax legislation, come across to the public. And, we could go back a number of years, but let's just go back to just a few years ago in 2017 with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. And then a couple of years later, we had 2019 and the Secure Act. And now we have a new administration in the White House and, a single party controlled, Senate and House of Representatives. So everyone's thinking about, well, what's in the future for taxes, tax policy? And is it going to change again? Well, like we said, the only thing that we can depend on consistently is that things are going to change.
Yeah, exactly.
So, if you think about the role of life insurance with regard to in responding to tax legislation, I can remember years ago, life insurance was preached as the sort of panacea for estate, taxes, and you own the life insurance in a trust and it's there for estate taxes. Well, then we had the, 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and not very many people had an estate tax problem anymore. So we're saying, well, how do we think about life insurance with that world? But now, as we come up into the new administration and certainly look into the not too distant future, estate taxes perhaps are looming large again. Not only estate tax, but income tax too, with the Secure Act that we mentioned. IRAs have to be distributed within 10 years of the death of an IRA owner if the beneficiary is not a spouse. So that's going to accelerate an income taxation. I think life insurance starts to come back into vogue, if I can use that expression once again, as a tax management financial instrument.
Completely agree. I think, like you said, the only constant we have in tax and estate planning is there is no constant. And, given, we all have probably 30 years of life expectancy, we'll see 6 or 7 more changes along the way. But insurance has been very predictable. I think that's the thing where you see, especially the high net worth and the ultra high net worth, is it kind of builds a core because it's risk shifting, like we talked about. You're paying a premium, especially when you're looking about guaranteed premiums, guaranteed premium, guaranteed death benefit. We know what's going to be there. It's income tax free. Death benefit is paid to the trust, and trusts, as we know, are taxed at the highest individual rate. So it's paid to the trust, income tax free. It's a very good leveraging resource for annual gifts because you can pass it on. And then the insurance inside the trust is estate tax free. I mean, that's been sort of the one constant we can kind of say in planning over the years, regardless of all the other changes, is we know that we're going to have, leverage gifting, income tax-free death benefit, estate tax-free, outside of the estate, properly owned inside a trust. I mean, that's the thing you have to look at because, as a tax planner, change is good because it opens up the conversation. But when you're talking about, like you said, Biden's proposal is $6 million exemption amount. I don't know if you saw Bernie Sanders came out yesterday, Senator Sanders, 3.75. Think all of a sudden, people in the Northeast with a house and a beach house pushes everybody into the estate tax realm again, back when I started in practice.
Yeah, I agree, Joe. It seems to me every 4 to 8 years we have a tax change, right, in this country. So who knows what it's going to be like when you're ready to depart this earth, right? Under what tax regime you'll be in. But I would say life insurance really hasn't changed much over the past, at least my 30 years that I've been here. It's still, like you said, it has all the tax benefits. It's predictable. The pricing changes slightly every so often. The products change slightly. But at the end of the day, if you sit down with a thoughtful professional that understands life insurance, that can custom design something that makes sense for your family, that hasn't changed, So, and if we don't have taxes, it's just a wealth transfer. It goes to your kids. So it's fair to say the higher the taxes, the more the use of life insurance, right? And I think for the next 4 years, at least, we're kind of heading down that road. So you'll see it getting a lot more steam now again, and it'd be more in mainstream life insurance. So but the bottom line is it's still the same product it was 30 years ago.
Well, I think we've quoted him before, and I'm not sure if this quote is actually real, but it's attributed to Benjamin Franklin, and that's, in this world, nothing is certain except death and taxes. And so we talked about both of those things today, and of course, life insurance. So if death and taxes are a certainty from Mr. Franklin there, then I think what we ought to do is make sure life insurance that we thought we had in place is actually in force. Someone told me a long time ago, Joe, that the best life insurance policy is the one that's in force on the day that you die. So, to your point, Charlie, and to your point, Joe, it's important to conduct annual reviews. It's important to make sure that you're aware of what current tax legislation is with regard to you personally and your family. It's important to you as a business owner to understand that one of the tools that you should be looking into for your employee compensation plans, for business succession planning, for key person planning could involve and could include life insurance. So knowing who to reach out to, who can help you in a professional manner, is critical. And to that vein, I would like to let our listeners know, if anyone would like to speak to Joe personally, you can reach out to Joe and connect with him directly through us at Palace Capital Advisors. So thanks so much, Joe Donovan from NFP Insurance, for being with us today.
Enjoyed it. It was a great day. And like I said before, everything in this area is a custom built house. There are no cookie cutter approaches, very similar to your process in the wealth management area. So I appreciate you having me on.
And Charlie, always great to have you on with us today.
Thanks, James. I enjoyed it.
Listeners, again, if you'd like to speak personally with Joe or other members of his team, you can reach out to him via Palace Capital Advisors, or if you'd like to discuss your personal financial planning, reach out to us through our website, pallascapitaladvisors.com. That's PALLAS capitaladvisors.com. To all of our listeners, we wish you the best. I look forward to connecting with you next time on the Palace Perspectives Podcast.
Palace Capital Advisors LLC, Triad Advisors LLC, and their representatives do not provide legal or tax advice. You may want to consult a legal or tax advisor regarding any legal or tax information as it relates to your personal circumstances. These materials are provided for general information and educational purposes based upon publicly available information from sources believed to be reliable. We cannot assure the accuracy or completeness of these materials. The information in these materials may change at any time and without notice. The information contained herein is for informational purposes only. It is not personalized investment advice and should not be construed as a recommendation to purchase or sell any particular security, sector, or strategy to any individual person or entity. Securities offered through Triad Advisors LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Palace Capital Advisors LLC, a registered investment advisor. Palace Capital Advisors LLC is a separate entity from Triad Advisors LLC. Joe Donovan is not registered through Triad Advisors. NFS Insurance is not affiliated with Triad Advisors.